Welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vaish, your host, founder and CEO of BoostSolo. I'm really excited to have my next guest on. She has gone from chemical engineering to decoding soul success. She helps people ditch the coulda, shoulda, woulda and embrace a life filled with joy, humor, and true fulfillment. Lori McDowell, welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here.
It was great to have you, and I'm excited to get started. So when we chatted before, one of the things you mentioned to me is that your journey from corporate life to solopreneurship was shaped by some unexpected challenges, right? Like being pushed out of a job. So could you talk a little bit about that journey and how some of those pivotal moments sort of influenced your decision to embark on this path?
Sure, I'd love to. So yes, I had been working, I was a chemical engineer and I had been working in the chemical industry for over 30 years. So I was fairly successful and I was working for this company for about 11 years. And about a year prior, my boss had retired and everyone, including myself, thought that I might be considered for the job. And I wasn't even interviewed for the job, which was kind of a red flag. Yet, I was in my 50s and I said, Ma, I'll stick it out. I don't want to get a new job. I'll deal with it. And a new boss came in and we got along fairly well. And I was still doing very, very well in the company. I had the biggest clients. I was the highest ranking woman. And I thought everything was going okay. And then one day we had a meeting. It was a team meeting. There were about 30 people there. It was about 4 hours away. And I drove to this meeting. And when I went to check into the hotel, they told me my room was canceled. And I was like, oh, it must be a mistake. And one of my coworkers was checking in at the same time. And he even said to me, that's the way they tell you you're fired. And we both laughed about it. And then I went and met with my boss that evening before the dinner. And he had his phone with HR on the phone. And they told me that I was fired and that they would pay me till the end of the day, which was kind of crazy. So I was 4 hours, it was 6 o'clock in the evening at this time. I was 4 hours away from my house. They canceled my hotel and I just had to go home. So I made that drive home. And the first part of the drive, I was mad. I wanted to punch someone. I was terrified because I was like, oh, I don't have a job and I'm being paid till the end of the day. What am I going to do tomorrow? And about halfway home, I guess the thought, you're used to doing something and the thought popped into my head that I don't have to go to work tomorrow. And when I had that thought, it was just this instant, I don't have to go to work tomorrow. It was like, I'm free. I don't have to work there anymore. And I realized that I really didn't like the job anymore since I had this new boss. I was getting by, but I dreaded it. I hated, getting on calls. I hated the fact that he was definitely checking in, a micromanager checking in on me every day. And I decided, I just kind of had something click in my brain that I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to put I can get another job, but then who's to say that other job isn't someday going to decide they don't want me either. So I decided I wasn't going to put my life, my career, my happiness in someone else's hands. And I spent, the next 2 hours trying to think, well, what could I do? What else am I good at?
Okay. Yeah, no, and I thought ghosting was bad, but that's a horrible way to let someone go, right? I mean, I complain about things today, but I can't imagine what that must have felt like. Yeah. And and now, if I recall correctly, you'd also dipped your toe a little bit, right, before you quit or before you were laid off.
And when I found out that I didn't get that job, I said, maybe I should start thinking about what I'm going to do next because clearly I'm not appreciated. So I actually started a part-time business. I bought a franchise that I was running part-time, which I had asked them for permission to do this, but that ended up being their excuse to fire me. I mean, it wasn't real, but they said, oh, well, you're spending company time on the other business, which I wasn't, but that was their reason why they could fire me and pay me, till the end of the day. So I did have this side business and it was bringing in a little bit of income, but I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do full time. It wasn't really, it was okay, but I didn't love it. I didn't want to spend all my time on it. It wasn't really what lit me up and made me excited.
Right. And so how did, I realized it wasn't sort of the smooth sort of journey to entrepreneurship, right? So
No.
how did those experiences sort of shape your approach to being an entrepreneur? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I had to kind of jump in. And so I really didn't get the time, I would have liked a little time, more time to think about what I was going to do. But I guess because I had to jump in, I just went with what felt right. I mean, I had always wanted to write a book. I knew someday I was going to write a book, and I just didn't have time before I had a job. So I said, well, while I'm figuring out what I want to do with the rest of my life, I have some time. Maybe I'll write a book. So I contacted a friend who had just wrote a book and found out how he did it, and worked with the people that helped him and started writing the book. And then while I was writing the book, I just started, looking online what could I do? What kind of help can I get? And I found some coaching groups, and I found some people that support new businesses, help you launch a program. And I said, well, I've always loved speaking. I've done a lot of training in my corporate job. I like teaching people. So maybe I will do a training class. And when I first set that up, I really didn't know what I was going to train on. I thought I had done a lot of equity, diversity, leadership training. So I thought I would start with that. And as I wrote my book, I guess my heart and my intuition just took me down this path of mindset and life and reinvention, and took me in a different direction, which is where I ended up.
That's great. And so I want to actually touch on a couple of things that that were in terms of your journey, but also your brand, right? Because I think it's very interesting because you went from chemical engineering, which is arguably very different from focusing on personal development. So I'm just curious, like, how is that unique journey sort of shaped your approach to coaching and also to building your brand story?
Yeah, I guess one of the things it's done, in my coaching, I do a lot of, with the so-called woo-woo stuff where we talk about your intuition and limiting, releasing limiting beliefs and energy work. And I guess, if you had talked to me a couple of years ago, I probably would have been skeptical. So now, because I have this brand as a chemical engineer, I can actually tell people, yeah, I was skeptical too. I really, I spent 30 years working with the logical side of my mind, and I did some meditation. But if someone told me that, I was holding myself back, and if I did an energy release and if I did some of this stuff, I wouldn't have believed them. Yet now that I've studied this, I see the results. So in some ways, I think it's helped me because I have a little, I see this coin from both sides. So I can work with people who are skeptical and explain that, I understand. I would have been skeptical too. And yet I truly believe that this has helped me, and it will help everybody, that you can really, that your unconscious mind is keeping you from what you really want, because it's trying to keep you alive, which is important too. Yeah, you can stay alive and still get what you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love how you sort of take what might have been, some people might have perceived as a weakness in the coaching space, sort of the chemical engineering side, and turned it into a strength, right? Because it's sort of a yin and yang, like you said. But the coaching space is very crowded, right? So how have you sort of figured out how to make your message stand out? And is that one of the things you sort of lean into more?
That is one of the things, and it's a crowded space. There are a lot of coaches. And, I guess part of it, there are a lot of coaches, but I think there's a lot less good coaches. So that's one of those
That's
things
true.
that, I've actually done I've taken my chemical engineer, my PhD study, and I said, if I'm going to become a coach, I need to study this. I need to get certified. I need to look at all the things because I want to be a good coach. So part of it is I've really gotten the education, looked at, I've learned a lot of different modalities, looked at all the different things. And then the other is, I've used it a little bit in figuring out who I work with. I guess I don't know who said it, but always says, your best clients are who you used to be. So I work with a lot of women. I work with a lot of women engineers. I work with people that used to be in corporate and ended up, leaving their job for some reason, whether it's their own choosing or not, and help them. I work with people who were in corporate and were kind of overworked and burned out and not fulfilled, yet stayed in those jobs because they had good pay and good benefits and they were safer. So I've kind of looked at who I used to be and targeted a lot of my coaching to people who are that person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I mean, one of the things a lot of solopreneurs struggle with is finding out what we call the niche audience, right? And it sounds like you've identified your ideal client. It's who you used to be. So people who come from a much more logical, sort of structured background, um, and who sort of need the other side of the coin, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
So let me ask you a little bit about I love your soul success, right? Can you talk about how you came up with this concept?
Sure. Yeah. I was thinking about, I was talking to one of my clients, I think, and I was asking her questions about, her job and what she was doing. And she kept telling me how, like, oh, well, kind of like, yeah, I have a good salary. Yeah. I like the people I work with. I like my boss. And, everything she was saying was positive. And I kind of was like, well, so why, if that's all so good, why do you want to talk with me? And she came up with the idea that, well, I feel like inside something's missing. And that's, through that conversation, I kind of thought about most people, or a lot of people, not just women engineers, but a lot of people in life, on paper, if you were to write down, they have, a nice house, they have 2.5 kids, they have, a good family, they have the car, they have the job, they have the salary, they can afford to eat, and on paper, they look at success. They look successful, but inside they don't have success in their soul. Their soul is feeling like something's missing, that they worked really hard and they've got all the material things. They've got whatever, they did everything they were supposed to do. They followed all the rules. And yet they never stopped and said, what really makes me happy? What really brings me joy and brings me success in my soul? So that's kind of where I came up with that.
You just described almost everybody I know in the corporate world right now. There's like a
Yeah, I mean, it's
whole
the corporate
everyone.
world. And even people, even people who start their own business, they start their own business and they're loving it. And then as they grow, they end up, I had a friend who was a scuba, I met through scuba diving, and they decided they were going to move to Mexico and start a scuba business. And then they decided to buy some real estate, and they got so busy that, I saw them after a year, and it's like, when was the last time you dove? And they're like, oh, we haven't dove in over a year. And it's like, well, the whole point you moved to Mexico was to scuba dive, and suddenly you're so busy in your business. So, even people who run their own businesses forget why they started them sometimes and get so wrapped up in running the business that they lose all the joy.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And that's something solopreneurs have to sort of keep an eye out for, right? Because we really have no boundaries. There is
Hmm.
no 9 to 5, right? And it's
Right.
like you can work on a business 24/7, 365. So there's no off.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
love it at first, so you keep doing it, and suddenly you realize, and I have to do that. Suddenly I realize, like, oh, I want to, I need groceries. It's like, oh, but I can't go in the middle of the day. And it's like, oh, well, yes, I can because I need them now, and nobody is going to tell me I can't. And
We're going to come to that because you are juggling a few balls, right? But first, I want to sort of approach that from a brand perspective again. So you are managing multiple ventures, right? You work with Reimagine Strategies, Schoolie Mitchell, and Refinery Calc. So could you talk a little bit about how have there been any sort of conflict with these things competing with each other, and are you facing any sort of branding challenges as you navigate these three different roles?
are, I guess, from a brand perspective, I mean, my true brand is the Reimagine You, which is the reinvention mindset. And I'm actually in the process of upgrading my brand, which I can give you you're the first to hear this, but I think that the overarching, the big umbrella brand is going to be Your Extraordinary Life. And just that, it's your life, it's your extraordinary life. So as long as you stay in that umbrella, people can do different things. And that's what I've tried to do. So, in Refinery Calc, I do it a little bit. It's like, a secure source of money where I have some consistency. So every month I get a little bit, whereas when you're a solopreneur, you never know. One month you may have money, all the come in, and the next month you have nothing. And our bills don't always like that. So that, and it's helping a friend. It's helping, it's got to do with environmental and, green hydrogen and the hydrogen market. So it's helping something that I think is good for the world. If it gets to the point where I'm not enjoying it, where it's not helping, where I'm doing something else, I won't do it. And I actually, I was working a little bit more and I cut back my hours there. So it's something that I'm doing a little bit. Now, Schoolie Mitchell, I did put on hold while I grew this business, but I'm picking it back up. And I think they go together very well because with Reimagine U Strategies, I'm helping the business owner, the solopreneur, the corporate person, the person who's running the business, running the career. And I'm helping them as a person, I'm helping them inside. So basically, I'm helping them find joy and fulfillment. And once they do that, then they're open to helping their business succeed. And what my Schoolie Mitchell franchise does is to help businesses find expenses and reduce them so it helps the business succeed. So they kind of go together. And I think what I've found was that a lot of people, when I first started doing Schoolie Mitchell, were in that they weren't even open to considering it because, oh, it sounds too good to be true, or it doesn't make sense, or I could do it myself. And that is part of their mindset. Like I almost feel like once I'm coaching people on their mind, they'll be more open to see if, okay, now that your mind is looking for success and you're open and you realize that you can't do everything by yourself, you can look at this other business. But it is a balance, it's more of a counterbalance. So I have to say, one week I went to a conference a couple of weeks ago for Schoolie Mitchell. And I said, okay, this week I'm going to focus on Schoolie Mitchell. I'm not going to schedule anything else. And I think it's a lot, in life, the same thing. I mean, mothers have to decide I'm going to focus on this at this point, and maybe later I'll focus on my career, or I'm going to focus on this part of my job. So I think it's always a bit of a count. If you want to do more than one thing, it's a bit of a counterbalance where, instead of trying to do them all and doing them all poorly, you do one well for a day or two, and then you do the next well for a couple of days.
Yeah, I know that feeling because you have to have, multiple sources of revenue, like you said, just to make sure that there's something coming in all the time. It is a balancing act. So you mentioned something a few times now. You emphasize joy a lot, right? And you just said and also humor and sort of balance. And I think it's a part of your brand, which, it comes through. So how do you sort of ensure these values, joy, humor, balance, translate into your daily work life, especially during challenging times, which it
Right.
sounds like now you're juggling a few balls too. So
Yeah. I think it's just really the overarching thing is, when I wrote the book, I met so many people, the people I interviewed, who had horrible, horrible things happen to them. And yet they were all happy and joyful and positive people. And I think that's a part of it that you can't really, you can never control what's going to happen to you, but you can always control how you react to it. And I mean, there's even been scientific research that shows, when you smile, like you can't have you can't hold a negative thought when you're smiling. Your brain can't think negative when you're smiling. It's almost impossible. So I think joy really leads to fulfillment and success, and fun is part of, when people forget how to play, forget how to do things they love, they end up, that's when they really end up losing that fulfillment and getting burnt out and getting overworked. And if you, keep that fun, keep that joy in your life, it keeps you grounded. It keeps you in a place where, even if you work 80 hours a week, if you're having fun and taking time out to laugh or smile or, have coffee with a friend or something, you still keep that happiness. So, and I'm an adventurer. I've always been an adventurer. I like to try new things. So I kind of have my motto is, life is meant to be lived one crazy adventure at a time. And I think if you keep that mindset in life, then, you see everything. If something happens that's a setback, it's like, well, it's not really a setback. It's an adventure. So let's see how we can play with this and turn it into something positive.
yeah, it's interesting you say that because I was going to ask you about that adventurous spirit and how it sort of helped you in your entrepreneurial journey, which is a very uncertain journey, like you said, right? So it sounds like it sort of it guides your bumps in the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you think the bump is just, it's another experience, something to try. Like, when you have no money, it's like, well, this is kind of interesting. I could see what it's like to, you know, be creative and try to figure out how do I cook meals for a week with the stuff I have in the pantry. and it's possible and it's fun because you may come up with really creative recipes. So even, there are things you can learn to do that are different, like for everything. If you think of everything as just a fun experience or something to learn from, it changes your outlook. So you don't really see the negatives as much, or you see them, but they don't bother you. They don't hold you back.
Yeah, no, I love that, and you're right. It is a matter of perspective, right? So, and so the other thing that was very interesting to me is you sort of wear your passions on your sleeve, right? Your love for sports, fitness, travel. It's all highlighted in your bio. So, tell me how these passions sort of influence your brand, and also do they help you connect with clients on a deeper level? Have you found? Because a lot of people sort of shy away and just have the resume, right? So I'm
Right.
curious.
I think they help me connect with people who do resonate with me. So people who love life, people who think that things are an experiment. Now there are people who think I'm not serious enough. There are people who may not, you know, resonate that or think it doesn't work for them. And I guess what I've figured is there's billions and billions of people in the world, and I'm never gonna, everybody's not gonna like me. So if someone doesn't want to work with me, that's because that well, there's somebody else there. So I figured. I mean, in corporate, I think I tried a lot of times. I tried to change my personality or change what I was doing to make everybody happy. And you just can't make everybody happy. And when you try, you make nobody happy, especially yourself. So I've just decided I'm going to be me. I'm going to be who I want to be. And the people who resonate with that will want to work with me. And the people who don't will find someone else.
Yeah, again, a great philosophy. I think that's really a wonderful lesson again to take away. Is like you have to be comfortable in your own skin, right, and understand that you can't appeal to everyone. And we always say that about brands too. You try to be everything to everyone, you'll be nothing to anyone, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so your journey's also had a lot of highs and lows and ups and downs. And you mentioned you were the only woman in a department, and also the being unceremoniously fired. So, can you talk about how those difficult moments have shaped your coaching philosophy?
Sure. Yeah, I guess part of what they've really shaped is that, we don't always have control over what happens to us. And sometimes things aren't, no one ever, I never tell a client that it's all going to be easy because it's not. Things are going to be hard. Things are going to be difficult. Things are going to happen to you that you wish didn't. And, things happen, as I went through my life when I was writing my book, there were a lot of things in my life that I wish they happened differently, or they weren't positive, or they were tragedies to go through it. But I couldn't control those. And one thing I learned early is that life is not guaranteed, and life is, you never know when it could end tomorrow, it could end today, or it could go on for another 30, 40 years. You never know. So why waste time worrying about what could have been that you can't change, and focus on what you can change and what you can control. And that's really what I try to teach in the coaching, not just, know yourself. You have to really do deep self-discovery and figure out what it is that what do you want? What is your why? What makes you happy? And then once you figure out what it is and why you want it, you want to put your all energies towards getting it. And there are different ways to get it. I mean, I think everybody can have complete success, everybody can have the life they desire, but that doesn't mean everybody can't be an NBA player or a professional singer. I mean, some of us just don't have the talent or the height or something. But you could do something. Maybe you can't be, if you love basketball, maybe you can't be an NBA player, but that doesn't mean you can't become an analyst or a scorekeeper or something. I mean, you can do something you love. You can always find something that's going to excite you, and you really should spend your life, once you know what that is, going towards that. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And everybody talks about financial success, and the world revolves around money. But when you're doing stuff you love, and when you're happy, and when you're living in that kind of an abundance place, the money will just come because you're not doing stuff that's going to stop you from earning money. And when you're helping people or doing what you love, money just seems to follow.
Yeah, no, again, great advice, Lori. And I have to say, though, you shattered my illusion that I would become Tiger Woods one day. I
It
guess I
might
was
not be
wrong.
Tiger Woods, but you could still, there's local golf tournaments or
So let me, so talking about that, though, a lot of solopreneurs I know, and I've struggled with this too, struggle with imposter syndrome, even after achieving success. Have you ever experienced this? And if so, how did you overcome it?
yeah. I still experience imposter syndrome, and I think I went through my life. with it. I mean, I tell the story about even, in school, I always got good grades, but when I was in kindergarten and first grade and second grade, I used to throw up every year when the school started because I was sure this was the year they would figure out I was not really smart and I was just pretending. So it was, and I think everybody has imposter syndrome because we're all setting the way we see ourselves is we're so much less, we set our own standards so much higher. I mean, the stuff we tell ourselves about us, we would never say to a friend. Like if our friend if your friend came up to you and said, oh, I feel like my business isn't doing well and I don't know if I'm going to make it. I mean, no one is going to say, yes, you're right. We're going to say, oh, what do you count? You're amazing. You're wonderful. You could make it. But we won't give ourselves that advice. And that's one of the exercises I tell people, it's called advice to your friend. Think about something that's bothering you that you think about yourself that's negative. And if your friend came up to you, what would you tell them? And then, look in the mirror and tell yourself that same thing, because we're just so hard on ourselves. Other people don't see us the way we see ourselves. Other people see us and they don't see all the flaws. And the bad part about that is, as I mentioned, and studied for the TEDx talk I did, you actually will, the way you see yourself, if you really get stuck in that, you can project that to the world and make other people start seeing you that way. So if you're always putting yourself down, always saying you're not good enough, that's the impression you're going to give to the world. And then people are going to start seeing you that way and they're going to start treating you that way. And it's kind of like a cycle, whereas the same thing happens the other way. If you always see yourself as capable and positive and, successful, other people see you that way too, and they actually treat you that way. And when they treat you that way, you see yourself more that way, and it just brings a positive cycle. So
I love what you just said though, because for me also it just sort of flipped a switch of like, you would never tell other people that, right? So why do you tell
right.
yourself that? Yeah, and that was really enlightening. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're currently focusing on in your coaching business, and if there are any sort of exciting projects in the pipeline? I know you're doing a rebranding, but beyond that.
Yeah, I just came from a week of this amazing facilitator training course on building a one-day workshop. So I actually have these one-day workshops that I'm doing that really, in one day can take someone through an amazing transformation to, where you're stuck and you're feeling frustrated and imposter syndrome and limiting yourself to, at the end of the day, you have a 3 or a 6 month goal that you've told your subconscious mind you're going to meet and inspired get to it. And then after that, we have a coaching program that will kind of an accountability program that makes sure you're sticking on to that goal. The other thing I'm planning, and I don't have dates, whether it be in spring or fall next year, but I'm planning to start some I'm calling them like a mindset, kind of a passport to play mindset retreat, where I'm going to hold them somewhere in the Caribbean, and they're going to have, you get to do some discover scuba, and there'll probably be yoga and meditation and hiking, or, just something for anyone who's so stuck in their business that they forgot how to have fun. So this is like, you get to have fun while you get to learn stuff and improve yourself. So it's kind of a combination of coaching and fun. So it's a business expense, but yet you get that joy back. So I know I'm going to do it sometime in 2025. I don't know when exactly or where yet, but I'm excited about that.
That's great, and I love the fun part of your brand, right? It's really prominent. There's very very few sentences have I heard coaching and fun. Most people don't think of coaching that way, but I love it. So let me ask you now, if you could offer one piece of advice to someone wanting to start their solopreneur journey, what would you say to them?
What I would say as you're starting your journey, I'm going to give you two pieces of advice. The first thing is, even if you're starting your own company, you're not going to be able to do it alone. And the good thing is you don't have to. There are so many people out there that will help you, join a networking group for business owners. There are things that are inexpensive or free that you can really get people to support you. There are people that are, take advantage of the free things that are offered, free gifts, free workshops, because you'll learn a lot from them. And yes, you get on their mailing list, but you can always unsubscribe, but you may meet great people that you want to partner with there. So don't try to do it all alone, even though it's your business. work with other people, because you can't be an expert in anything, and you'll develop a support thing. And from going from corporate, I think people tend to be more competitive about things, and going and, being a solopreneur, people are not really competitive. Even if you have the same type of, clients, people want to help each other. They figure if we all succeed, it's better for everyone else. So ask for help when you need it. Find people to help you. And then the other thing is more of an internal, and it's just, your language. Your language has a huge difference. If I said to you, Nikhil, don't think of a purple elephant, the first thing that pops into your head is a purple elephant. So when you say, I don't want to fail, your subconscious mind hears fail. When you say, I can't do that, your subconscious mind hears, can't do that. So the way you talk to yourself, the way you phrase things, always look at where you want to go and positive. So, don't ever say, I don't want to fail. Say, I'm going to succeed. It's a much positive. Your brain hears it differently, and your brain doesn't know the difference between what hasn't happened yet and has. So it says, okay, you're succeeding. I'm going to make a lot of money, as opposed to, I don't want to be poor. Your brain hears that and sees it. So positive talk will really help your subconscious mind start taking you where you want to go.
And your actions start to follow, it sounds like, once it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I think
Yes.
that's, again, really great advice. So Lori, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to tell our listeners?
Let's see. I guess I don't, if I could think of, the one, if you want to learn a little bit more about my journey, the book, The Reinvention Mindset, is available on Amazon. It's a very easy read. It's got some funny stories in it. It's got some sad stories, but I think it's a good overview just for people who want to think about, okay, a lot of people feel like they want to start their own business, but they like, oh, I'm 50, I'm 40, I can't. Well, I was 60, so you can.
No, that's great. So I love to end the session with a little fun rapid fire round. So I'm just going to sort of throw a couple of questions at you and just tell me whatever comes to your mind.
Okay,
So if
great.
your life was a motivational speech, what would be the opening line?
You can do it.
That's great. What's one unconventional piece of advice you would give someone struggling to find fulfillment in their career?
Don't try so hard.
Okay. And what's your go-to mindset hack for pushing through a really tough day?
For me, it's dancing. I know it's not
Oh,
really a mindset, but if I start dancing, it just makes everything feel a little bit better. Put on some music you like and just dance around the house, and suddenly the challenge just seems easier to face. So I guess it's a mindset hack on the inside, but
it is. Yeah, and you could even do it in the office, I guess, right?
you
It'd be
can,
kind
yeah,
of
close the
funny.
door or go into the bathroom for a few minutes.
What's the most surprising similarity you found between running a marathon and running a solo business?
Oh, the crowds. The people cheering you on, because when you run a marathon, that's what gets you going. Just the people on the side. And running a solo business is the same thing. There are people who want you to succeed, and if there aren't, then you need to get rid of those people. Get rid of the people who don't want you to succeed, and surround yourself by the people who do.
I love that. Now, if you could have any superpower to enhance your coaching abilities and skills, what would it be and why?
Ooh, would probably be mind reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you develop those
Right,
abilities.
mind reading, yeah, because then you could tell if someone was being really telling you the truth or hiding something, and it would make that whole thing easier. You wouldn't have to ask them all the questions and try to get to that root cause. You could just read their mind and figure it out.
Definitely a lot faster. If you could reinvent one aspect of the coaching industry, what would it be and why?
I think it would be, some people just, the belief that it helps. There's a whole lot of people that say, coaches are just in it to make money, and I don't really need a coach. I would like to make the coaching, the personal development, business coaching industry the same way as the sports coaching industry. because no one who wants to be good at sports says, hey, I'm going to be a great golfer, but I don't need a coach. They
Right.
have multiple coaches. And I don't know why we think in everything else we could do it without a coach. So if I would make, the fact that the coaching industry for business and life and mindset and everything else is not the way it is for sports, because you would never play a sport without a coach.
Great point. Even Tiger had a mindset coach. So there we go. And that's a great way to finish. Lori, I feel like you've given us a free coaching session. There's been so many valuable bits of advice there and actionable, tangible advice that you've offered. So it's been wonderful having you. Your joy is infectious. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Nikhil. I really enjoyed being here.